can speak for my own self. It's not all about money. If you enjoy what you do every day, then you're really not going to work. Now let that sit in. If you really enjoy what you do, then you really don't go to work. How many people, I'm guilty, you see them, it's Monday morning, gotta go to work. Then there's people out there, Monday morning, let's go. I mean, it's true. If you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And if you have a good attitude.
And if you're not sure, I mean, I was telling him earlier, he asked about my son. I said, this is a big lifetime decision you're thinking. You're like 17, 18 years old. If you're not sure what you're going to do right now, like you haven't had that moment where you're like, oh, that's really what I want. Don't worry, but don't do nothing.
Yes.
Get in some kind of training, get in school. You'll have a professor or you'll have a friend. They'll be like, oh, you're so good at doing that. You ought to try this, or you'll get a summer job that'll really lead it. Just keep making positive steps forward. You
Correct.
Don't have to commit to something for the rest of your life today. Look at all the different jobs he has held from his position.
Yes.
I mean, his, training.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't ever really go to college. I went to Panola. I did some stuff in high school where I got dual credit. But I really never had the drive to go to college. I'm going to be honest with you. I never had the drive. It's like, Bill Gates, or now you have the guy who owns Facebook, or you hear these people, multi-gazillionaires, and it's like dropped out of college, or they did it. I never had that drive. But when I got that drive, I went and I had a plan and I executed it. I can tell you a story, and this is a true story. I was an AB student. Sometimes I make a C. Yeah, I at least get one at least once a year, And I looked at it as, and I'm just going to speak the truth here. I looked at it as if I was a valedictorian or a salutatorian, or any of you the valedictorian here?
But y'all are smart kids. Give yourself a little credit.
Alright, I dated the valedictorian in my class. We graduated with 24. She studied all the time. What did I tell you I did? I was hunting and fishing. I had better things to do than study. I made a C, I was passing. When I went to college, I had that burning desire that I wanted to beat my friends that I had learned there. In other words, if there were one position at the company, I wanted to be there in line first with everything. I left TSTC with a 3.94 GPA average because I had a plan. I executed, and I didn't know what I made. I just went in there and did the stuff. I enjoyed it, and I had fun. This is a true story. I was sitting at graduation. I'm sitting on the front row. I'm about from myself to Miss John. From the people that's giving this, we're sitting in a Coliseum in Waco, Texas. I don't know how many people were in that Coliseum. There had to be thousands. I went up that day, had my little old uniform on, my little old square hat, and I thought, well, look at this. I've actually graduated in college. This is kind of rare. They started handing me all this stuff. These little ropes. These little tassels. And I'm like, I guess everybody gets these if you graduate. I don't know. Well, we're sitting there and they're introducing. APT was our program, Aircraft Pilot Training. They started talking about this. They started talking about that. They said, who has 4.0 GPA average? And everybody was, I could see 3 or 4 people over back here in the back. Stood up. Everybody, and all that. Well, then it got down to the 3.9, whatever it was. And they called it something. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what all this stuff was around my neck. The guy sitting there looking at me, okay, well, I'll have everybody all stand and everything. I'm sitting there, going, man, this is pretty good. I'm actually going to graduate. And the guy's looking at me and he's going, and I'm like, what? The guy goes, you're supposed to be standing up. I looked around, I'm like, I guess I am. The whole place is now laughing at me because I'm a moron. Got a 3-point-something, I don't stand up because I got this castle around my head. I didn't know what it meant. My point being is, I'm not bragging about myself. If you work hard enough, you will make the grade and you will do stuff that you didn't even know that you accomplished until those embarrassing moments. I didn't go to my 4-year graduation. I had hunting and fishing to do. So I hate now that I missed that, because again, I can't go relive that because I earned to walk across that stage, but I had a bad attitude at the time. It wasn't a bad attitude, I just had other things to do that day. So that being said, take opportunity to enjoy every moment of everything that you accomplish and know that you earned it. Be a part of it. Any other questions? Y'all are quiet.
It's early.
So, like, how would you get your private, like, I guess we say private license, or your personal license, like, for
private license?
To meet
What you can do, and again, I'd go out to the airport, find your instructor there. There's Stebbins Aviation, there's Kim Smith Aviation out there. I'm not in the general aviation. I'm in more of the general aviation is kind of the people that fly on the weekends, or the corporate type guys. I'm not in that, so I don't know exactly who all's over there now, but there are some people. Go over there and take your Discovery flight. Go over there and take that and find an instructor, or find somebody that'll take you up flying. It may cost you $100, it may cost you $200, just depends. Go over there and do that, and then talk to that person, and they can tell you how to do it. There's Laterno University. Laterno University right here in Longview is one of the big, huge aviation programs of the country. I mean, it's huge. Right here in Longview, Texas. They have a school program. It's a 4-year degree program. You may want to be in aviation maintenance. You may like you may like aviation, but you may not want to fly, but you want to work on airplanes. Great program over here. There's also air traffic control if you want to do that. Another really, really great career. Air traffic control. A lot of it is they're good paying jobs.
Is that the one where you look at the radar and
you look at the radar?
They don't crash?
Yeah.
So,
Important job.
So, do you actually have to, well, are you have to get over your fear of heights?
You know what's funny about heights is I can go flying and I can look down all day. Now I was on a trip. We were at the top of a building and I'm looking down and I'm going, man, that's a long ways. I can't look down there. That's kind of crazy. And I had something under my feet. There's nothing under your airplane. But I flew with people that were massively scared of heights, but were pilots. It's like, okay, yeah, I think it's an illusion with your brain. I honestly do.
Have you ever had like or tell us about your most terrifying moment, or have you ever had anything where you really got nervous while flying, like something went wrong?
Yeah, there's lots of things I've experienced. We've had some emergencies. Emergencies where you get a fire alarm in the baggage compartment. That's probably one of your, because you don't know what the fire is. You don't know how big it is. You don't know if it's even going on. Ours that day was actually a false alarm, but we've trained for that. We've trained for it. Now, training means you know the steps and the procedures to do, but sometimes if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you still have to get there. Had a fire. I've had some times where some things were not working right with the airplane, so different control surfaces were not working right, but we managed that. I flew with a guy one time that he scared me, and not necessarily saying I took over, but you have to make decisions sometimes that no, that's not what we're going to do. You may be the man in charge, but that's not what we're going to do today, because now I'm running the show. Not saying that takes place all the time, but they did that day. There's, had some windshields crack at times and things like that. So there's always a lot of things that can go on. But for like something like Sully Sullenberger, who landed in the Hudson up there, nothing to that extreme. You don't want to get to that extreme. Those guys that day, they had planned what was going to take place when that happened, and they were prepared. Just with everything. So it turned out good.
start out by being a stunt pilot?
I did that a little bit when I was a flight instructor, and I figured out that it wasn't something that I needed to pursue a little bit. But you know, it's like everything. You know, you guys are young. Myself and Miss John here, you know, we can tell you if you slam your hand in that door right there, it's not going to feel well. And folks, you being young, there's some of you that's got to go over there and slam your hand in that door. You just can't take our advice because you have to learn for yourself. And there's going to be people that are a little bit more adventurous to go over there and do something like that. There's somebody that's going to be a little more adventurous to be a stunt pilot. It doesn't appeal to me flying upside down, and I mean, you know, I've done it before. Whenever I figured out that it wasn't going right, it's because all the dirt that was in the floor mat was hitting me in the face, and I'm like, you know, this is not something that I probably need to be doing at the time. But that being said, I'm just not that adventurous.
Chloe, did you have a question?
Yeah. What are the benefits to the aviation industry?
There's a lot of benefit to the aviation industry. You know, it depends on the route that you want to go. For example, there's a huge benefit if you go to the military. There's a big adventure going through the military. Because now if you go to the military and you retire, you have that type of benefit, the benefits of that. If you got into the air traffic control, you know, 20, 25 years, you can retire. So if you go to air traffic control, there's air traffic control school at Texas State Technical College. You get out and you get into it. You know, if you get into it by 25, at 50, you can retire. If you go to the airlines, retirement's at 65. But if you know, there's always benefits to everything if you plan and prepare. You know, if you guys were to get out of school here now and you save your money and you just plan and prepare and say, you know what, I'm not going to work past 50, you can all do it. Most people can't. So it depends on really what you want out of it versus what I want out of it or your friend wants out of it.
Are there smaller benefits that people don't think of?
Well, there's always, you know, benefits of you know, always think of an insurance. Your medical insurance is a benefit. If they put money into your retirement, think of that as a benefit. You know, I think self-gratification of accomplishing what you wanted to accomplish is a huge benefit. I hope I answered that.
Are you allowed to take pictures with the famous people or like say their name?
Yeah, I can tell you who I flew. How many of you watch The Voice?
No.
The Voice. When I was
I only watched it once.
when I was out in California, I'll tell you who I flew. I flew around Adam Levine with Maroon 5 when they were on tour with the Rolling Stones. I flew around. How many of you like a little bit of rock and roll? How many of you heard of Led Zeppelin? Ooh. Flew around Robert Plant. He was on tour himself. Flew around him. How many of you like Snoop Dogg? Hey. Flew around Snoop Dogg. Flew around P. Diddy. He would bust one off every now and then. So, flew him around. I flew a lot around, a lot of rich corporation Wall Street folks. I did some center disease control flights down in South America, rescuing some folks. Flew around Tony Bennett. He's a old guy that sings. Flew around the guy. I always go blank. He did the telethons. He died the last 2 years, 3 years maybe. He did the huge telethons.
I'm going blank.
Somebody say. If I said the name, you would know it. Flew him around. Sean, Marlon, Wayans, the Wayans brothers. Yeah. Flew them around, and I've never laughed so hard in my life. They're hilarious. Flew around some people that own some movie houses out there. I'm not going to say their names because one of them's been in the news in the last couple of years and it wasn't good. Let's see here.
all done for it?
What is
At my time, Facebook was not big. We had signed a disclosure that we would not take pictures and stuff, but I had some pictures and things with them. Computer died and lost everything. Didn't back it up.
I got it, hackers.
I've had my 15 minutes of fame where people are climbing the fence, taking photos of us while we're getting the airplane ready, and I've had my 15 minutes of fame sitting next to people when they were talking about us, wondering who we were out at the airport. So,
How does it fit with family life, like schedules and things like that?
if you, it can be tough, I'm not gonna lie. If you like to travel, if you like being home, it can be a little bit testy. When I first got out of school, I was ready to roll. Let's get out of town. But it's, you know, my work schedule currently is I usually leave on a Monday morning and I come back home Thursday afternoon or Friday. When you're starting out in the airlines, you're going to be working the holidays. You're going to be working over the weekends. You're going to be working when the hot water heater breaks at your in-house. You're going to be working when the dryer goes out at your own house. And you're going to be working your kids' birthday parties. It's just the way it is. If you know that when you go into that there are advantages and disadvantages, there's going to be sacrifices on any career that you do, then you can accept that.
What are the disadvantages on being an airline? What?
Well, I'll put one, starting out, you know, you're kind of on your own out there. There's nobody sitting there that's a boss looking over your shoulder, but it's a very humbling and can be humbling when you're sitting there eating Thanksgiving dinner by yourself on Thanksgiving. It can be very humbling when you wake up on Christmas morning and your family's having Christmas and you're sitting in a hotel by yourself. It can be very humbling and eye-opening when your friends that you've been with your whole life and they're going on your yearly trip and you're going to work.
Opening day of deer season or something.
Opening day of deer season. Opening day of duck season. Or you decide that you want to go to the Ranger game or a football game on opening day. Your buddies are all there now taking selfies and you're sitting at work. I'm going to say this. That goes along with any job. Doesn't matter what you're doing.
My son's having spring break this week, and
And
so
you're
he's
working.
home alone, yes.
My
But
son's on spring break this week. It's been weather. Well, you've seen what it's been the last 3 weekends, and I've been wanting to go fishing and look out outside right now. Guess what? I'm going to work, and he's at home. So,
Have you dozed off by politics before?
yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not. When you say dozed off, you talking about up there sawing some logs, and I mean, drool running out, dripping off your chin? No. Here's the thing with flying. Does that happen? Yeah. If you had 27 pilots in here and they said, no, it don't happen, I'd call each one of them a liar. Because it happens. Have you get up there? Here's the deal with flying. The most fun of it is taking off and landing. But then when you get up there and that sun's beating in through that window and you know it's early morning and you got the seat kicked back, you listen on the radio and it kind of gets a little warm in there, what happens?
You sleep.
So, anybody that says they never dozed off in an airplane is one or two things. Either they haven't been there long enough or they're lying to you. That being said, things like that happen. Things like that happen every day in cars. Things like that happen every day if you're running equipment. Things like that happen every day probably at your husband's job where they're sitting in there taking a 15-minute break and you got somebody dozing. It's normal. So, in aviation, it's just made, the news of it is made larger because if I'm supposed to turn over this particular fix, or I'm supposed to land and I pass the airport, what's going on up there? The thing in aviation is they record everything. In my airplane, they're recording you from the minute you turn the power on to the minute the power is turned off. So if I say something or